This video is for 9th generation Honda Accord owners that want to upgrade their factory audio system, and you know that you have to keep your factory radio connected to keep that upper display going. So maybe you want Android Auto, maybe you want CarPlay, maybe you just want better sound quality, but up until now your options have been very limited. So this video is going to show you how to keep your factory head unit connected and extended to the trunk so you keep that upper display going, your backup camera, lane watch, whatever you have, continuing to work. The first step is to go on eBay and find yourself a donor head unit. I found this one for $75. The key thing is to find one that has the wires cut off just like this one is shown in the video so that you can get both of the male and the female connectors. Now I have a 2015 Accord Sport with the push button radio, and so these are the connectors that come on my radio. So let's go through them real quick. So the A connector on the upper right, that's the main 24-pin harness. We're going to need to extend that.
The one next to it is the D connector, and that controls illumination to the upper display, makes it go dim at night and bright during the day. There are 3 wires in an Accord Sport that need to be extended. Next to that is the K connector, and that's for USB.
I chose not to extend the USB with the factory head unit. The C connector is mostly ANC. There is a hands-free link wire in there, but I have that connected to my steering wheel control to keep my hands-free link buttons working with my aftermarket radio. The L connector is for the antenna, and the aftermarket radio uses the antenna, so we don't need that. On the bottom we have the G connector. That's power and signal to the backup camera. And if you've got an EXL or above, I think that's where lane watch comes in as well. And then there's that H connector, which is the video cable, which has been the thing that has kept most people from trying this.
So when you look at this a little closer, you realize there are 4 of the 8 connectors that need to be extended. So it's really not that big of a deal. The A connector has 9 wires, and you can use a speed wire to extend that. The D connector has 3 wires. The G connector has 6, and I used Cat 6 cable to extend that. And the H connector has 3, and I used a microphone cable to extend that. You could use any type of shielded audio cable.
This is the wiring diagram that I developed for my aftermarket Kenwood unit into my 2015 Accord Sport. And you can see which wires connect to the aftermarket, which wires stay connected to the factory radio, which ones go to the steering wheel controller, and it's a pretty good reference. So the next step is to buy the cable that you're going to use to extend the factory head unit to the trunk. In my case, I went on Amazon and I bought speed wire. That's on the left in the blue. That's got 9 connectors, and I'm using that for the A harness. If you remember, I said the G connector needs 6 wires extended. Well, conveniently, a Cat 6 cable has 8 wires, and so I chose that to extend the G cable, and I had 2 wires to spare. The last one is a microphone cable, or you could use an audio cable. It has 2 connectors plus a shield.
What I don't show here is the D connector, and that's because I originally didn't think I needed to extend the D harness, but it turns out that you need to if you want to control the illumination of the upper display. Again, that's 3 wires. I used a Cat 5 cable to extend that. On the lower right, you see the Metra female connector. That's a 70-1729, $7 on Amazon. You need to buy 2 so that you can get enough pins to populate 1. And then you need to buy the male connector. I don't show that in the picture here. That's a 71-1729. You can also get that on Amazon.
The next step is to disassemble the donor head unit so that we can get at those female connectors on the back. It's a relatively straightforward process. The only thing you really need is a screwdriver. You can see how dirty this thing is. I'm guessing it was sitting in a junkyard open to the weather, just coated in dust and dirt. So taking the side brackets off, taking the faceplate off. That faceplate is going to come in handy later on because I'm going to use that from the donor when I package this up to put in the trunk. So there's the head unit minus the faceplate. I'm going to set that aside. And now, again, continuing to disassemble the head unit. That's the heat sink there on the side. I think there's 6 or 7 screws that hold that in. Again, simple tools. I think all you need is a screwdriver to take this thing apart. The factory head unit is essentially in 2 halves. There's an upper half that has the main harness and well, you saw the connectors earlier. And then really the only harnesses the female connectors we're gonna harvest are out of the bottom half. So here I am struggling to figure out how to get, there it comes. Okay, top comes off. There is the CD player right there. A couple screws and that thing's gonna pop out. Here we go. The CD mechanism lifts right out, and we'll set that aside. And now you see one of the circuit boards. I zoomed in to give you a little better close-up. There's a tricky little cover that you've got to figure out how to get off. There's some more screws that hold this circuit board onto the lower half of the unit. Eventually you just got to pry it. You see that white plastic thing? That's what that plug is, what was holding it down. So you can set that aside, and we're just about done. There is the G and H harnesses that we were really after. So we're going to take off this other top. There's a little shield that sits over the G and H. The H is the video cable. The G is the backup camera, and if you've got an EXL, it's lane watch. So there we go. So we got the circuit card off. So on the right is the G, and left is the H, or the video, and now they're swapped. This is what the back looks like. So now I have the G connector off, and you can see it was pretty mangled, so I trimmed it down, and I got just the 6 pins I needed. So here's the here's the Cat 6 that I'm using to extend the G cable, and you can see that it's got a nice insulator around it, and you can see the 8 wires, 4 pairs. So I'm cutting, there was a plastic core, and I cut off the brown wires, and so I chose to use the blue, the orange, and the green. So I have 6 wires, and that's all I need to extend the the G connector. And you can see here me using my little helping hands to solder it, heat shrink, and make the connection. And here is the other side. Now that is the video connector. That thing was a bear to get off. I did a little bit of damage to it, but it's intact, and you can see there are 3 connectors. The big one towards the middle is the shield, and then the smaller ones are the connectors, or the conductors. So here's my microphone cable. I boldly cut off one end of it, slice into it, and you can see that there's, just like the video cable from the car, there's a shield. The one from the car is silver, this one's copper colored, doesn't matter. So cutting that off, and then really it's just a simple, straightforward soldering of the 2 conductors appropriately, and then you solder the shield to that larger center post. So you can see my setup here where I was connecting the soldering. And now it's time to work on the main connector, or the A connector, which is the 24 pin. And you can see me doing some soldering work here and heat shrink. And of the 24 pins, again, there's only 9 of them that I needed to connect. And here is a shot of the finished cables before they were finally wrapped. I'm going to test everything, test the connections to make sure that everything works before I go ahead and tape and heat shrink and wrap all of that for final installation. There's the video cable. And now it's time to hook it up and test it in the car. So now my factory head unit, again, is buried inside the dash. You're going to see it here in just a second. The cubby's coming out, and the factory head unit's going to come out. I'm going to disconnect all the connectors, and then I'm only going to connect the 3 that I have made. I've got a base knob there. I'm going to disconnect, and there's the factory head unit stuffed inside the dash. So out come the plugs. Now I did have just about every plug into that factory head unit because I just didn't know that you didn't need them. So here's the speed wire with the A connector, which is the 24 pin. Again, 9 of them are used. Here is the G connector that's got the backup camera. Again, that's the Cat 6 using 6 connectors. That plugs in. And then here's the video cable. 3 connectors, 2 conductors and a shield, and that goes into the bottom. Connect the faceplate, put the key in, turn it on, and cross our fingers. What I'm looking for in the upper right hand corner is that Honda display to come up, and boom, there it is. So it works. I'm going to turn the key from accessory to on to make sure that the backup camera works. Here we go. And there's the backup camera. So it all looks like it's working. I think I'm going to test the display button by cycling through the, hang on, I'm starting the car. I forgot what I did. Okay, starting the car, and now I'm going to let that cycle. And I think I'm going to hit the display buttons to make sure that the displays work. Where it goes from MPG screens. Oh, I'm actually testing the settings. So again, the factory unit right now is just sitting in the passenger seat because I'm just using it to test to make sure that everything works before I run all the wiring. So now the wire is wrapped and shielded and ready to go in. Now I used that donor faceplate to turn the radio into this, where I trimmed off the ventilation. You can see what the side of it looks like. Here's what the underside looks like. And then it was time to run the wire. I chose to run all of the wires down the driver's side because I didn't have any other wires going there. I removed the driver's seat to make it easier. And here's the wire in the channel. And now I tried a couple of different test locations. This was the center facing forward. That didn't work out so well. I didn't like the fact that it was blocking the pass-through. Then I tried sticking it over to the driver's side, but I didn't like the fact that it was sitting at an angle like that. And so I eventually found this spot on the passenger side, more towards the center of the trunk, with the radio facing towards the center of the trunk. So now if I want to adjust settings, adjust the clock, change anything about the vehicle settings, I can open the trunk and I can look through the back window and look at the radio in the center console and make any adjustments that I need. So the bottom line is this is a huge improvement over having it buried inside the dash. I have access to everything that I need, and if you're going to go aftermarket, then this is the way to go. Thanks for watching.